It's a great honor to speak with you today as the Professor of the Year for this remarkable class, the WVU College of Law graduating class of 2021. I had the opportunity to do this talk in front of many of you, but I'm going to try to recreate it on tape without the reassuring sound of Jenna Martin laughing at every one of my jokes. So may Jenna and her family be blessed for generations. I am really humbled to receive this honor when I serve on a faculty with so many exceptional classroom and clinical teachers. But while this makes me feel a twinge of imposter syndrome, the honor means a great deal to me because it does speak to my basic motivations for doing what I do. I decided I wanted to be a professor back when I was in college, back in the days when U2 was known as an up-and-coming Irish band and The Edge still had hair. And I made that decision at that time for several reasons. One of them was, of course, my aversion to getting a real job, something that still motivates me today. But much more importantly, I wanted to be a teacher because my teachers meant so much to me. I wanted to have the opportunity to be to other people what my teachers had meant to me, and an award like this makes me feel like I might have achieved this in some small measure, and that's a wonderful thought. So thank you so much for this honor and for giving me the opportunity to speak with you today. As I've just explained, I was delighted back in January when I got the email telling me I had been selected from 3.0 class president Austin Tomlinson. But in addition to delight, I did have other reactions because it is me after all. In fact, 3 reactions to be specific. I will, of course, go through them in order. The first reaction was the 3.0 class must have voted before they took the fall 2020 Crim Pro 1 final exam. I've never verified that hypothesis, but I strongly suspect it is true. So please forgive me a moment of inside baseball, but I have to comment on the fact that I learned during my PIA dinner a couple of weeks ago that one common complaint about that now infamous exam was roughly this. Professor Taylor, how can you give us a diagram of the one-story burglar's lair in question 1, yet we don't get a diagram and map of Dante's multi-fenced pot farm for the damned in question 3? That's a paraphrase, not a direct quote, but I think that's the gist of it. I do want to take this opportunity to publicly apologize. All I can say in my own defense is that I am able, with my meager artistic skills, to put together a diagram of the one-story burglar's lair. I tried to map the pot farm for the dam, but it would only have made things worse. So you should actually be grateful that I didn't try it. Okay, the second thought was, since I only taught one class this year, I have to think that this award is in part the 3.0 class saying thank you for serving as interim dean, and I do appreciate that very, very much. The third reaction I had occupied me for a longer period of time, and it was a somewhat terrifying thought, essentially this. I was lucky enough to get to do the graduation address for the class of 2017, and I'm not sure I have more than one graduation address in me. I mean, you've got 2 to 3 hours to impart all your wisdom to the next generation of lawyers. How many different ways can you do that? And when I went back and read my 3-hour 2017 graduation address, I found that sure enough, most of the things I would want to say were already in there, including such things as you must recommit yourself to what you're doing every single day. You need to be straight with people. When you're dealing with other people, try your best to assume they are acting in good faith. Remember that no one ever accomplished anything by herself. Get a dog. Or, if you're so inclined, cats are nice too. All of these things are true. They're all important. All things your parents probably told you. I still believe in all these things, but I didn't want to simply repeat myself. So what is it that I'm going to say? I pondered these last 2 thoughts for quite a while, and ultimately they led me to a plan. So here goes. You folks have been a terrific class. I think I've taught every one of you at least once. Many of you I've taught multiple times. I've mooted you for competitions. I've worked with you as student leaders. It's been an enormous pleasure to get to know all of you at least a little and to get to know some of you quite well. This is really an exceptional class. There are many, many extraordinary scholars among you. There are gifted oral advocates and writers. There are strong leaders who set the tone for the class. There are people who have worked their tails off every day for 3 years, both in and outside of the classroom, because being all in is just who they are. There are people who care deeply about social justice issues and making the world a fairer and more inclusive place. There are people who've given an extraordinary amount of time and effort to helping those who need the help by doing pro bono work, by doing community service, by working through PIA. There are people who you all know would be there for you in a moment of need. Some of you are all of these things and more. You have so much promise and potential, and I'm so excited and hopeful for your futures. So you're an amazing group, and I owe you a great deal, especially after this year, and I want to explain why. You've been through a lot in the last 3 years. Our politics has been more polarized than it's ever been in my lifetime, and cynicism about government and the rule of law has continued to rise as we fail to effectively address problems like climate change that are going to threaten our futures. Closer to home, the state's economy the last several years has not been particularly great, and resources at the law school have been, shall we say, a bit thin. I know it, you know it, I know that you know it. It is, as the existential poet Donald Rumsfeld would say, a known known. Then, over the past 15 months, we had the pandemic, the death of George Floyd, and a surge of attention to long-neglected problems of systemic racism, and then finally, a threat to the peaceful transfer of power in the country that invented the peaceful transfer of power. It's been a lot to grapple with, to say the least. When times are hard, it's easy for people to be bitter, snarky, and disgruntled. It hasn't been the easiest time to be an interim dean, because in these conditions, it would have been really easy for you all, if you'd chosen to convene a circular firing squad and put me at the center. But while there have been a few rough moments, to be sure, for the most part, what I felt from the students all year, and especially from this class, has been support and even at times forgiveness, which is an especially rare but extremely needful virtue. I can't tell you how many times I was feeling a bit down and a kind word from one of you picked me up and gave me strength that I needed. Indeed, getting this award was one such moment for me. So to the extent that the ship is still in one piece with me as a very dubious captain, I have you all to thank for that. I've devoted nearly 19 years of my life to this place. I care about it a lot, and I thank you for having trust in me to lead it this year. This year's experiences have given me a few new insights that I didn't have to share in 2017, new to me at least, if not to other people. Here are 2 things I learned this year that I will pass on to you. Starting with the mundane, the first one is, I have learned that this is a phone. It is not simply a device for texting people, for taking photographs, for surfing the internet when you should be paying attention. You can actually use this thing to talk to another human being in real time. And I've learned that when you actually pick this thing up and call someone, you can often sort through misunderstandings and figure things out much more quickly and cordially and more efficiently than you can by trading texts and emails. Now, this may seem an obvious point to you, and I hope it is, but those of you who know me well will know that apparently it was not obvious to me. So this year has taught me that a 4-page email and a 15-page memo are not necessarily the solution to every single problem. My colleagues know that deep down inside, I still secretly think they are the solution to most problems, but I'm trying to unlearn that and make progress. When I did pick up the phone this year, I often did better than I did through my more traditional channels, and the more reluctant I was to pick up the phone, the more time and trouble I saved myself by doing so. So I have a long way to go, but it's been a good lesson for me. I commend it to you. Useful and practical advice, I think, but pretty small scale. The far larger lesson I've learned this year is what I might pretentiously call the value of embracing risk, because it wouldn't be a John Taylor talk without a certain degree of pretentiousness. I've always admired people who do not back away from fear, who don't back away from risk, who are not afraid to fail. People who see possibilities where others see only limitation. I like watching outdoor films about adventurers like the still young but already legendary free climber Alex Honnold. I admire the person who hundreds of years ago first looked upon the forbidding exterior of the pineapple and said, "Yeah, I'm going to eat that." I admire the first-year law student who, upon hearing a difficult question asked in class, says to herself, "I'm going to try to answer that question. What's the worst thing that could happen?" I admire colleagues like Allison Peck, who a few years ago said to herself, "I'm not a clinician. I don't know anything about immigration law, but there are people who need help. And you know what? I'm going to run the immigration clinic." Allison would be quick to remind me that she had help and support in doing this, but from most people's perspective, this was a crazily risky and bold choice. And Allison's done an amazing job, and she will tell you how rewarding that choice has been for her. So trying things that make you uncomfortable, trying things that are new where you know you might fail, these are difficult things to do. I admire all that, but I often admire it more than I actually live it out. One blessing of being interim dean this year, however, is that it has forced me to do a lot of things that I was uncomfortable doing, and to try a lot of things I didn't think I'd be very good at. Now, in many instances, my self-doubt proved to be on the mark. I thought I was bad at delegating people, and after this year, I can tell you I am really, really bad at delegating to people. Right? I thought that I would be poor at managing people, and I'm not great at that either. This job has required me to risk failing in some very public ways, and to do so in settings where I didn't have complete control over the outcome. I do love control, so that's been a hard thing for me. It's forced me to grapple with my own limitations, and I've made some significant mistakes. But in light of all that, the important thing I've learned is that the world did not end. My family didn't shun me. My colleagues didn't shun me. You all didn't shun me. I mean, I've got 6 weeks left, but I'm relatively hopeful I can make it through from here. People apparently could tell that I was trying and acting in good faith, and they've given me the benefit of the doubt. And that's been an important and really affirming thing for me to find out. And while there are lots of things about this job that I'll admit I won't miss, and I'm very eager to get back to the classroom full time, there are things I will miss, and I think I've learned a ton from doing this. I think the fear and risk and discomfort that I've had to deal with this year has forced me to grow as a person and will make me better in the long run. And I've also met a lot of really interesting people around the university and around the state that I would not otherwise have known. It hasn't been the easiest year, but as time passes, I think I will increasingly look back on it and say it was worth it, at least for 1 year. There's a line in a film I once saw at the Banff Mountain Film Festival where a climber says, "If you're not falling, you're not trying." And that's always stuck with me. My sons also have a saying with the same message that has become standard fare in the Taylor household, though at this point its origins are a bit murky. My sons like to say, "You must risk it to get the biscuit." Words to live by, but then we are an odd family. In any event, all of us face choices where we have to decide whether we are willing to push ourselves and risk failure. I know this sounds like a Disney movie, but I think this year has taught me that as cliched as it may be, you really do have to risk failing and often to actually fail to keep moving forward as a person. As Dean Wilson likes to say, the question in law practice isn't whether you're going to fail, because you will fail, you will screw up. The question is how you deal with screw-ups and what you learn from it. So when you get that opportunity to take a case that scares the hell out of you, remember the value of embracing risk. It keeps you engaged, develops you, it keeps your passion alive. And that passion is what's going to enable you to serve your clients effectively, which is what we're all about here at the College of Law. This has probably felt like 2.5 hours already, so it's time to wrap up. You all have enriched my life and the lives of the faculty and staff at the College of Law by being part of our community for the past 3 years. We are going to miss each and every one of you. Please keep in touch and let us know what you were doing. Soon you will be out in the world representing clients or running businesses or doing a variety of other things. And in adapting to these new roles, I'm sure you're going to face some fear and uncertainty. But in those moments, I hope you will hear a voice inside your head that says, this is what I wanted, this is what I prepared for, and I can do this. And I hope you will remember all the people that you'll be spending time with on this graduation weekend who deeply believe in you. You are going to do great, and I can't wait to learn about all the things that you're going to accomplish. Thank you again for this honor and for giving me the chance to speak with you one last time before you begin the next chapter of your lives.